Hello and welcome to Knack Kitchen, where today we are making Kaju Katli, and it is a bonus video, but that's because it's Diwali and I did want to make an Indian sweet for a change. And this recipe is absolutely delicious, very easy to make, and only requires 5 ingredients, out of which 2 are technically optional, so you really just need 3 ingredients. And this comes together in just about less than 40 minutes. So without further ado, so they can actually make it right away, let's get into this video. So the 5 ingredients that make this recipe are rose water, some cardamom, some water, some sugar, and of course some cashew nuts. So the first thing that we're going to do is grind our cashew nuts into a fine powder. So here I'm just adding the cashew nuts into my mixer grinder, and the one thing which needs to be kept in mind over here is that we do not run the machine for too long because we want a powder and not a paste. And the longer you run the machine, you run the risk of the cashews releasing their oil, which would lead to a paste. So here, as you can see, I have my ground cashews and there are a few lumps over here, and that is because the cashews did start to release the oil, but it's only natural. You can't completely avoid it, but that's fine. Just crush it with your fingers and our powder is ready. So now we're just going to hop onto the stove, and here I have a saucepan and I'm going to add some sugar, and along with the sugar I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of water. And now I'm just going to bring this to the boil and wait for the sugar to dissolve completely, and then we can proceed with the next step. So unlike a caramel, here you can use your spatula or spoon, and here I was just checking if the sugar is completely dissolved, which it was. So now I'm going to go ahead and add the ground cashews, and now we're just going to stir this together until it comes together into a paste. This recipe does involve a lot of stirring, and when I say a lot, I mean it. You are going to have to stand for at least 15 minutes continuously stirring this paste because we do not want it to burn or stick to our pan at the bottom. So now I'm just going to keep cooking this paste on medium-low heat. We don't want high heat here because this is going to keep cooking gradually and slowly and thicken up as it cooks. So after about 5 minutes of continuous stirring, now I'm adding the cardamom powder. And if you don't have cardamom powder, you can use fresh cardamom pods, and you can actually grind them with your sugar if you choose, or you can grind it separately. And if you don't have cardamom altogether, then you can skip it as well because it is one of the optional ingredients. So after stirring that in, I'm adding the other optional ingredient, and that is rose water. And I like to add a whole teaspoon. You can lower the quantity if you aren't as big a fan of the rose flavor, but I do love it in this particular sweet, so a whole teaspoon for me. And now I'm adding ghee or clarified butter, and it is the only way, in my opinion, to make sweets, or at least an Indian mithai. So do make sure that you add a good tablespoon of ghee. It is the festive season. You do not need to worry about the calories. And now we're going to keep stirring this, and as you can see, the paste has thickened up quite a bit. The way to check if your mixture is ready or not is to take a small amount in a teaspoon, set it aside until it cools down a little so that you can actually handle it with your hand. In the meanwhile, your mixture is going to continue to cook on the lowest heat possible, and while it's cooking, you try and form a ball with the small amount that you've set aside, and if you can get a smooth ball which is not sticking to your fingers, then you know that your mixture is ready. So here, I'm now going to just turn off the heat and set our mixture aside. So for the next part, I have a parchment paper over here which I'm going to grease with some ghee, and in case you don't want to use a parchment paper, you can just do this on a steel plate or a baking tray. I like to do this on a parchment paper directly on the countertop, and you will see exactly why. So here I'm transferring the mixture, the hot mixture, directly to the parchment paper. We don't let the mixture cool in the pan because it will start to stiffen up. And now, while the mixture is hot to handle by hand, I'm going to use the parchment paper to keep folding this mixture, which is more so like a dough at this point. So I'm going to refer to it as a dough. And now I'm just going to keep repeating this process for at least 2 to 3 cycles. So now we're just going to let this dough sit for about 5 minutes until it cools down enough to be handled by hand. At that point, we're going to flatten it out with the help of a rolling pin which has been greased with a little bit of ghee. And then we're just going to roll this out to the desired thickness. For me, the desired thickness would be somewhere around 3 millimeters, but if you prefer your Kaju Katlis to be a little thicker, then by all means, go that way. Now, one important thing to be kept in mind is that you do not want the dough to sit too long before rolling, because if you let it sit down for a longer time and it cools down too much, you will have cracks. As you can see, I have some cracks because I let this sit for about 10 minutes. Anyhow, our dough is now at the desired thickness, and now I'm just going to shape my Kaju Katlis. And normally I would be using a ruler at this point, but I just could not find one, so I ended up eyeballing it, and it did not turn out as badly as I thought it would. So, well, yay me. And well, if you have a ruler, by all means, please do use one. You will get the most perfect shaped Kaju Katlis. And that's all there is to this recipe. It's actually ready to be eaten right away, and I am straight away going to dig into one of the scraps. And here you can see our Kaju Katlis are perfectly set already. So here you have it, my recipe for the perfect Kaju Katli, the perfect accompaniment for every festive season, and it's so easy to make, requires so little effort, but is completely packed with flavor. I hope you give this recipe a try and you love this just as much as I do. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like, share and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next Tuesday.